Myriam. Welcome to Miracles Happen. So good to see you and meet you and talk to you. I'm really
Thank
excited.
you. I'm so happy to be here. Yay.
Yay! I was emailing you earlier saying, I can't wait to talk to you. I just finished your book and wow. So Catalogue Baby is what we're talking about. And we're going to talk about what catalog means, as well as just, I'm just curious to start out with your story. Like, and first of all, who are you? What do you do? Where are you in the world? Just start there, a little mini bio.
All right, mini bio. So my name is Myriam. I live in Vancouver, BC in Canada. And I guess I used to organize a festival. It was a local grassroots festival. And I burned out big time from that. And part of that burnout, a lot of stuff that came out in the burnout, but one of the big things was that I really wanted to start a family. And I kind of had given everything to the festival and forgotten to do the things that were necessary to have kids. And that included I was dating, but I never really found the person. And then I ended up meeting this guy, and a few months later, the whole kid thing came up, and he wasn't ready, and I was already 40, and I'm like, okay, what do we do now? And he's like, well, I'm not ready. I'm like, well, I can't wait. So we ended up breaking up, and I still really wanted to have a partner with whom to go on this journey. But historically, I had always had these giant gaps between real partners. So it's like, okay, I'm going to give myself 6 months till my birthday. And if I don't meet anybody by then I'm going to do it on my own. And I still kind of went through the logistical stuff, made an appointment with the clinic because I figured there might be a wait list, which there was. There was actually a 6 or 7 month wait list.
Oh.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And which ended up being perfect because it was actually the month after my birthday was the appointment date that I got.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very serendipitous.
Yeah.
So my birthday came and went, didn't meet anybody. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm doing this. I'm doing it on my own. And kind of, did all the tests, had my appointment, and they're like, okay, well, you're healthy. Your hormones are great. Everything seems physiologically great. We don't think you need to go through IVF right now. We're going to start with IUI. And I'm assuming everybody in your audience knows what IUI is, intrauterine insemination.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. We know all the language. Right. there's a whole language. We're now at least Duolingo.
Yeah. And so I actually got pregnant on my first go. And I was like, yeah, everything's great. The dream come true. I knew it was going to be this easy. And then the day before my 8-week ultrasound, I ended up miscarrying. And so that was a huge wake-up call. Not only physically and emotionally, all the distress that causes, but the realization that we're just never taught about this.
No.
You would think, you're taught that your pregnancy is so easy. You're going to have unprotected sex. You're going to get pregnant, bammo, right?
Yep.
And it's never something in sex ed as you grow up. Maybe you'll hear a rumor that maybe one of your mom had a miscarriage, or your grandma or whomever, but it just kind of zips past you as if it's somewhere else, right? And that's when it really hit me that, oh, okay, this is a thing. This is a real thing. Anyways, I tried multiple times after that with IUI, and it just wouldn't take. And the doctor was like, oh, that's really weird. You're healthy, and usually it takes after 3 IUI, you should be pregnant. And still the test came back normal. And finally on the 7th one, I did get pregnant again. And then it turned out
7th.
Yeah. And it turned out that the baby that I was carrying had a genetic fetal anomaly. So then I was in this position of trying to figure out what do I do? How many spoiler alerts am I allowed to have?
Please, please give your spoiler alerts because I'm going to want to comment.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I had to go through the really devastating process of deciding, did I want to keep a baby that may or may not survive, A, and if it did survive, he did survive, what would his level of disability be? And was I prepared to cope with that? And because he could have been like relatively functional in the world, but he could also have been like really heartbreakingly disabled, or, you know, like just
limited.
So many physical problems and delays and all this stuff. And what would his quality of life have been? And I'm coming at it as a single mother by choice. And there's like all these factors that came in. And like, I talked to everybody that I could think of who would have any contact with folks. It was, he had Down syndrome, which I'm always like terrified of actually revealing. And I always,
that's in your book too.
Yeah. Like I always try to, I don't know why it's still like this protective mechanism where I'm like, he had a trisomy, which is true, but like there's multiple kinds of trisomy, and Down syndrome is the one that is the most viable of all trisomies. But it's
sorry to interject. I just wanted to say, you know, the way that you are talking about this is like these are the facts. This is what happened, and it's very hard. I don't think that people, when they read your book, because I'm saying when, because people, you need to pick it up. It is incredible. It is an illustrated recount of everything you went through. There's like a stop hammer time part of the book where you're like, listen, I'm going to let you know this is really fucking hard for me. And I'm just, among other things that you said, there was a part where you're like, I'm hoping to draw on your compassion and understanding. I'm getting chills like remembering that, because I'm like, yes, please, because you have no idea what others are going through in this. I mean, it's just a horrible decision-making process, so heavy. So I just wanted to interject that.
So anyways, long story short, after several weeks of like torment, I decided to terminate. And I'm getting emotional just even thinking about it. But anyways, after that, I just couldn't go through that again, right? When you're going through IUI, you can't know the viability of your child or the genetic makeup of your child, see if like all the chromosomes are in the right place and if you have the right number, until they're months into your pregnancy. Like 3 months, 4 months into your pregnancy, where you get like absolute confirmation, and then you have to make a decision. And so I decided to switch to IVF, because you can get the embryos tested, and then at least you know that baseline you have like a much higher chance of having a healthy baby. It doesn't just having a normal embryo, I found out the hard way, doesn't mean you will actually have a live birth. It doesn't mean that you will actually carry to term. Doesn't even mean that you'll get pregnant, for that matter. But at least, and it also doesn't mean that you will, if you do have a live birth, that your baby won't have something that isn't detectable via PGS testing, right? But it ups your chance exponentially. And I needed that comfort. So I went through 3 rounds of IVF. The first 2 had plenty of eggs, plus or minus a decent number of embryos. None of them were viable. So it was just like so many hormones and so many ups and downs, and like hoping and you know, like I think the worst was like not just the 2-week wait. Everybody talks about the 2-week wait once you have an embryo transfer. But it's like that 6-day wait of like, you know that you have this blastocyst in a petri dish, and you're like, how many of them are going to survive? how many of them are going to be viable? And it's like every day is like 600 years.
Yeah.
And you get a phone call like every 2 days saying, okay, well, you have this many who have survived. Okay, you have this much. Okay, oh, you have 5 embryos, you have 2 embryos, you have 0 embryos. And then you have to wait another X number of weeks while they go and get tested. Yep. Right? So you're like, yay, I have, I don't know, whatever number, 4 embryos that made it to day 6. They're sitting in the freezer. They're potentially great. I really hope, crossing all the things, that they're healthy. And then you have to wait and find out if they actually are. And then either they are or they're not. And then twice for me, like nothing was viable. Mm-hmm. And on the 3rd round of IVF, I had 1 viable embryo. And I promptly miscarried it. So it was, you know, like by this time you're like questioning like what's wrong with me? What did I do wrong in my past? How did I fuck up my body? What am I doing wrong? And am I even like a mother, a woman, like all these things that, which is hard enough when you have a miscarriage, but when you, on top of that, are miscarrying a viable embryo, it's like, it's such a mind fuck.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're only talking about, you know, like a small part of the picture too, and it's huge. But then there's also donor stuff. There's also, you know, relationship stuff with like friends and your family and all this other stuff going on, all in the book. You have a beautiful support system. But, you know, friends who are pregnant and, you know, moving on, and they have partners, and I mean, it's the perfect storm for crazy.
Oh yeah. And I kind of felt like on the inside I was becoming this person that I didn't recognize anymore, because on the outside, like I knew what I was like pre-trying all of this. You know, I was pretty chill, easygoing, friendly, all this stuff. And you know, I'm an introvert, but I'm also like, I like meeting people, and you know, the community is really important to me. And like seeing other people's stories is important to me. But the more I was going through my losses and the more I was going through my infertility, the more every time I saw a pregnancy announcement, every time I heard of someone who's trying, and you know, like there was one person who was like, oh, we've been trying for 2 months and we still haven't gotten pregnant. And you know, yeah, exactly. And she already has a kid. She has a partner. She's in a very loving family. Like, and not like, obviously I don't begrudge her this, but at the same time, it's like a huge kick in the gut, because you're like, okay, well, I don't have any of that. And you've only done this for 2 months.
Mm-hmm. I love one of the scenes that you have where somebody says to you, I understand what you're going through because, and then you're on the other side going, oh yeah, sure. Tell me why. Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Here we go.
Yeah. And this is all happening on the inside, right?
Yes.
Because on the outside, I have this like veneer of like, okay, all right.
Oh yeah.
Trying real hard to like empathize, but on the inside I'm like, no, just
screw you.
And like it was really hard. Like, how do I say this stuff in the book, right? Because some of it is so full of anger and bitterness. Like you just would never say shit like that to people.
No, right.
And you know, you're like, do I have her fucking uterus? Do I, let me tell you what I can do with your baby and your positivity. Like, I just want to punch you in the face right now. Like, you would never, ever say that to anybody.
Well, you and I wouldn't, but I'm sure there are some people who might.
I don't know. But even in the book, I was like, I can't have the Myriam character saying that, even though that's what I felt, right? So like, I created this little character called she's my biological clock. And she's like this sassy, like, Calamity Jane, take no guff kind of gal. And she's kind of my mouthpiece. She's both like the final kick in the butt that I needed to start the journey, but also she's kind of my mouthpiece for all the vitriol that would otherwise have come out of my mouth.
Yeah.
And it was really fun to use her, and also very cathartic and very like, okay, now I can just say what I really mean.
Yeah. Yep.
You know? Like she was a great tool to kind of have that separation where like there's me who like understands that this is just my own stuff, and not because I hate the person, and not because I'm like actually bitter about them. I'm just bitter that it hasn't happened for me and to me.
Right.
And
Right.
like, I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Right. We all need that characterization of our other selves that can say whatever we need to say. Yeah, it's really great. And that's another part of your book that is like so charming. There's so much, of course, darkness and trials and tribulations and such, but there's such humor too. Like, okay, can you speak to the sex glow thing? I'm dying, Myriam. That was hilarious.
It was, I mean, maybe other women can relate.
Yep.
So obviously, like all the ultrasounds happen with, a friend of mine calls it a twat wand.
Yeah.
But it's like an ultrasound stick that goes up your vagina and checks out your baby. And so, they also use it when you go through an egg retrieval just to make sure that they can see everything and they know where the follicles are. And for me, egg retrievals are super painful. They're like, oh, it'll be like a little minor pinch. People don't really complain about it. I'm like, yeah, no, more drugs, please. And
yeah, I should note, Myriam, I'm sorry, you're in Canada. Yeah. When I read that in your book, in the US, they put you under like anesthesia for egg retrieval.
Yeah, no, they
like, don't do that.
A needle up there to anesthetize locally, both your ovaries and your vaginal wall.
Yikes.
And then you have a fentanyl drip with, I think, another drug, I don't remember what. And I think they give you like anti-anxiety meds as well. But I think there are other clinics that do put you under.
Okay.
But in this particular case, they don't. And I'm kind of glad that they didn't, because above and beyond the pain, it was really cool to see my ovaries. It was really cool to see the follicles. And it was really cool to see the eggs once they made it to the lab. Wow. It was so neat.
That's cool.
It looked like little sunny side ups. Super cool. So I'm glad I got all of that. And my friend Lani was there. She's a big character in the book as well. She's one of my best friends, and she was there for so much of it. And she's hilarious. So anyways, the sex glow thing, to get back to that.
Yep.
So I was so high on drugs after that egg retrieval. And we're sitting in the recovery room, and because she was videotaping everything, we had like these mini interviews after almost every procedures. So she gave me the camera at one point, and I was like talking to her, and I could see myself in the screen, and I'm like, oh, I have like the sex glow. I'm like nicely blushed and like glowing, and it was like I had just had an orgasm or something, which I did not have an orgasm, but I went through this intense physical experience, and I was high on drugs, and it was just like such a funny moment.
Yeah. I feel like I have a sex glow. Do I have a sex glow? Yeah, you have a sex glow. So stinking hilarious. I was dying. And this was, as you were saying, it was documented, right? So Lani was taking photos and videos?
She was taking photos and video. Yeah.
That is amazing. Absolutely amazing. Yeah. Okay, so I'm sorry to interject on your story. Can you continue?
All right. So I guess by now I'd gone through all of that, and I ended up with pneumonia, actually, because I was so stressed out. My body was worn out. I'd gone through so much, and I just got really, really sick. And during that whole process, I was like, okay, wait, am I mixing up my timelines here? No, I'm not.
No, I think,
No.
yeah.
Yeah.
I got it.
So I kind of came to the conclusion that I just couldn't keep doing this to my body.
Yeah.
And so I made the really difficult decision to switch over to using egg donors as well as sperm donors. And it was a big process to figure that out, because I was like, okay, that means no more biology. Like my ancestry is no longer in these children. That means that a big part of myself, my body, is just not working, period. And like, what does that say about me? There's there's like a whole bunch of stuff. And like, how I was really worried of, was I going to bond with the kids because I don't have this biological connection to them? Were they going to feel like they were mine? But I hit that wall, and I just couldn't go through another round of IVF. And then when I looked at the prices for egg donors, if I went through egg bank, I mean, that's practically criminally expensive. Like it's just out of this world. But then I was like, okay, well, actually it cost the same as 3 rounds of IVF. And with my statistical chances, if I kept going with IVF, chances were that I was going to have at least another 3 rounds. So it'd come to the same thing. Plus they had a money back policy, which was amazing and also really weird.
It is strange.
It's strange, because if you're having like penis and vagina sex and you have a baby, like you cannot return that baby.
Nope.
It's just not going to happen.
No money back guarantee. Nope.
No money back guarantee. I mean, not that you would get your money back if you had a live birth through egg donors, but at least if you failed, then, oh, sorry, I'm just like, feel like my baby. Like, 1 second, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Non, on va continuer à regarder ça, okay? Nope. Coco Melon is still working its charm.
Oh, cool. Okay.
All right. So where was I at?
You were talking about going the egg donor and sperm donor route and the guarantee.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. So, and then the other thing that really kind of helped change my mind was the whole concept of epigenetics, where the environment influences which bits of DNA wake up or go to sleep. Like the DNA strand is actually like 100% different. However, like different things will wake up and maybe they'll have characteristics that are yours based on the environment that is your belly. So that was like, that's so cool. And then like these theories of like DNA transfer between your bloodstream and the baby's bloodstream, and while they're in utero, it's so neat and fascinating. I was like, okay, I can do this. This is great. Because like the counselor that I had this like fantastic bit of advice. It was like the best advice I got was live a week as if you are 100% not having a baby. You've decided this is it, you're done. How does that feel in your body, in your mind, in your heart, in your spirit? And then live another week as if you're 100%, you're just gonna go through it. You're gonna set your hope aside, give the hope to somebody else. And you're just gonna go through the steps because your final goal is you wanna have a baby and you're just gonna do it come hell or high water. How does that feel in your body, your mind, your spirit, all that stuff? So I was like, okay, I'll try this. And so I started with a not having a baby part. I think I lasted like 2 hours.
Never mind a week.
I was like, no, this feels so wrong. Like I just cannot imagine having kids. So I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna have to like put all the stuff that I can't, emotional stuff that I can't carry right now. I'm gonna put that aside and I'm just gonna go through the steps of having that baby, or like, like go through the embryo transfer, go through all the things, and then see what happens. So then I had to choose an egg donor, which is so different than choosing a sperm donor.
Yeah.
So it's like the sperm donor, you're like, okay, my deal breakers were they had to be healthy, they had to be handsome, and they had to be smart.
There you go.
That's it, right? Beyond that, I was like, they could be this or that, whatever. Like, I didn't really care. As long as I was attracted to them and they were healthy. Egg donors, I was like, it was all that. And I kind of want something to resemble me. Yes. And, like, I kind of want like a Jewy kind of look because I'm Jewish. And, and that was actually really hard because they had barely had any Jewish donors in the registry.
I suspect that's a big barrier.
It's a huge barrier. Yeah. And you find that also a lot with people who are Asian, or any people of color in general, like if they want someone who is Black, or if they want someone who is South Asian or whatever, it's really hard to find an egg donor. Yeah. Because the vast majority of them are white.
Yes.
And it's really unfortunate.
Incredibly unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really, it's like just adds another layer of pain and devastation and just like stress that who needs that extra stress? You just don't.
God.
Yeah. So anyways, what I ended up choosing, the first girl that I chose, she had brown hair, brown eyes. Okay. Sure. She didn't really look Jewish, but that's okay. The one or two girls who looked Jewish, I was like, no, I'm not actually. I don't really like your looks. So
okay, there you
go. So I chose her. I was super happy, and the eggs came and they got fertilized, and I'm like waiting, and it was super weird to like know that these babies were being created elsewhere. I'd never seen, touched, felt anything to do with that creation. At least with IVF, I knew that the bodies came from me, and I had a physical experience with the egg removals.
Yeah.
And she only actually had like 2 eggs that were viable, because I got them PGS tested. Even though they were young, I was like, I'm still gonna test them. And I got pregnant and miscarried that baby as well. So my doctor, by this time, she was just like, I don't know what's going on. There has to be some like undiagnosable underlying something, like something wrong with your immune system or something wrong with your blood that is like just something that we just can't diagnose and we can't find, because this is not normal. And then I was like, okay, well, I think I have it in me for one more, but then that donor had no more eggs. So I had to find a second donor, and yeah, it's pretty epic.
Oh my God. Yep.
Yeah. But the good news is that she had 5 viable embryos that were made from the eggs that she donated. And my doctor, I was walking down the street when I got the phone call, and she's like, okay, it's right after I got my lining tested and my progesterone tested. She's like, your hormones are great, your lining's nice and thick, we're going to transfer 2 in this time. And I was like, what? Say what now?
Breaks.
Like every time I had asked the lab if I could transfer 2, they're like, no, you're getting them PGS tested, and so we never transfer 2 because the odds of them sticking and staying are too high. I'm like, okay. She's like, oh, no, only if you're comfortable with that. And I was like, going off into a silence or a quieter side street so I could actually like think for half a second. And I was like, yeah, okay, well, I guess better 2 than none.
True.
True. So I was like, okay, let's do this. Let's do it. So I went in for the embryo transfer, and then the next day I was like, my belly started twinkling, and I was like, oh my God, they both stuck. Oh my God, this is crazy. And like, there's no actual physical way of determining that is true. And my beta test wasn't for another like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then even when you have a beta test, they're like, no, we can't tell if it's twins or not. We just know that you're pregnant. Okay.
It's yay or nay, right?
Yeah. But my numbers are really high. They were like in the thousands.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, no, still, you could have a singleton and it could be that high. I'm like, really?
Okay.
And then like a week or two into a couple weeks into the pregnancy, I was lying on my bed and their names floated past.
Yeah.
And it was a boy's name and a girl's name. It's like, and like there's like no way of knowing the gender of the babies until you have an ultrasound or you have the results, which in Canada, they're not allowed to divulge the sex of the babies before.
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're only allowed to find out once they have implanted.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And even possibly after abortion is not possible, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay.
But for sure after implantation and like a decent number of weeks has gone past, you're allowed to ask for the gender. Or for the sex. I always get those two mixed up.
Yes, sex.
Sex. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm having a boy and a girl. And then the genetic counselor called like weeks later. She's like, all right, because I requested to find out if I was right. She's like, I'm calling to let you know what the sex of your baby is. Do you want to find out? And I'm like, kind of yes. I kind of know, but I want to know if I'm right.
And kind of I already know.
Yeah. But I just want to confirm that I'm right. And she's like, okay, why don't you tell me what you think they are, and I will tell you if you are correct. I was like, I think I'm having a boy and a girl. She's like, how did you know? I was like, I just knew. Their names came past. Me floating. Like I could actually see the spelling of their names because Abigail spelled
so cool,
slightly different than the usual way. And yeah, anyways, it was so trippy. It was so trippy. And like even when before the eggs had been fertilized, like during that whole process of like waiting for the eggs and waiting for the fertilization, waiting for the 6-day wait, it felt like these two spirits were like just hovering over me.
I loved those images so much. I loved them in the book. It was,
I couldn't believe, like, I'm like, first of all, why are there more than one?
Yes. Why are you doing what?
And like, who are you? Like, why, like, you're like giving me high, like, it just felt like they were kind of cuddling with me. It was super trippy. And then when I found out I was pregnant with twins, I was like, oh,
yeah,
that was you.
Yeah.
And it's like, because I'm not a woo-woo person, I'm not a religious person, and I just like, but all these things just kept happening to me, like pregnancy after pregnancy, where I would like meet the baby. At one time, for one of the pregnancies, I actually like had an actual vision of the baby in utero.
Oh, cool.
It was like, those 3D ultrasounds. It was kind of like that.
Yeah.
And then it was super weird. But yeah,
not on this podcast.
Not on this podcast.
Not on this one.
I got my people.
That's right. Yeah, I don't know how much you know about the work that I do, but many of the listeners are. So I'm quite like grounded in science and like not woo-woo. And then over here, I wouldn't call it woo-woo because I think it's part of the same spectrum. So very, very sciencey, but there's a spiritual side and they're connected somehow. We just don't know yet. And so I do spirit baby work. So I work with people around spirit baby stuff. So definitely wanting to delve a little deeper into that once you come to the end of or really I like to say another beginning of your story. We'll get a little deeper into that because I think it's amazing. And one quick point, one does not need to be religious or even believe in an afterlife or in between lives or anything in order to have those kinds of experiences. So, okay.
So I guess the next bit of my story is going to be in the sequel to Catalogue Baby.
Oh, there's a sequel. Yay.
Called 6-Day Grow.
Cool.
Yes.
Heck yeah. Can't wait to read that one.
Stay.
Oh.
Where's the really creepy face? There's one with really creepy face. Come on.
Oh, yes. Super cool. Well, so for those who are listening and not watching on YouTube, I'm looking at ultrasounds right now.
There you go. I think this one's Abigail. Yeah. This one's Abigail.
Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. Okay. What? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is going on?
Yeah. So the whole sequel, because you would think, okay, Miriam's had her bag of shit dealt to her.
Mm-hmm.
All good, right? Yeah, no.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's more shit. Okay.
There's more shit. Lots more shit. But do not worry, you listeners out there. It all turns out for the good. But Isaac's water broke at 18 weeks. And that is 5 weeks before medical staff will do anything about trying to save your baby.
Wow.
And it's called Pprom. And generally often what happens, but not all the time, and far from all the time, you would go into labor days after or hours after your water breaks. But I didn't go into labor. I had a few days where I ran to the emergency room because I was cramping really badly and I lost so much amniotic fluid. And I ended up on bed rest at home for 2 months at home and 2 months in the hospital. And I just spent months and months just drinking coconut water and apple juice and water and all the things I could do, because I found out amniotic fluid is baby pee.
Oh,
and so, yeah.
Didn't know that myself. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So the more you drink, the more the baby drinks, the more the baby drinks, the more it pees. The more it pees, there's more amniotic fluid, and the amniotic fluid is what develops the baby's lungs.
Got it.
Because there's the transfer of liquid in and out that helps expand and contract the lungs, and it's very, very vital to their survival. Yeah. So somehow, I don't know how, I had the best team. I had a couple of midwives who were phenomenal. My OB was a lifesaver, literally, because she was the only one who advocated for me and who advocated for my boy, and all the other perinatologists and the residents, the other OBs that I saw in the hospital, because you barely ever see your actual OB if you're off to emergency room. We're like, we can abort tomorrow. Oh, don't you want to give your girl the best chance possible? I think you need to abort.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Do a reduction, kill the boy. And I'm like, I am not doing that. I've had to make this decision before in a different context, but I am not, there's just something so deep inside of me that knew that he would survive.
Yeah.
And I was like, and also, even if he doesn't survive, you're telling me that having a dead baby in my uterus for 6 months is going to make me less sad and stressed out than giving birth to a dead baby, a stillborn, or a baby that doesn't survive for more than a few hours or a few days. No, man.
Right. That's not happening.
That's not happening. So I really had to advocate for myself, big time. I got the stink eye bite from so many medical personnel. It was brutal. And I can't imagine other women going through this and being pressured into killing a baby that they really want and they actually deeply believe will survive, but then they're pressure, and they cave.
Yep.
There's protocol for Pprom. There's protocol for all kinds of different things that could go wrong with a pregnancy, and especially after a really difficult fertility journey. If you want to keep that baby, please, doctor, nurse, whomever, you've got to step up and protect the mom and the baby. So yeah, so the babies were born at 32 weeks, so 2 months early.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Abigail was like, I'm not leaving. A C-section because on top of everything, I was partial previa, so the placenta was covering part of my cervix. Yep. And Abigail, so like the girl, when the OB was trying to get her out, she kept rolling away. And she's like, I'm not leaving. I'm cozy in here. I'm just leaving alone. And Isaac was like, I need out.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Do they have similar personalities now?
Yes. Well, they're very, he's sunshine and she's sparkles.
Oh.
That's how I describe their personalities.
So cute.
Yeah. And one of the reasons when I saw their names floating past, because I was like, oh, I don't really want names from people that I know. But the reason I kept the names was because Isaac means laughter. And Abigail means father's joy. And even though there wasn't a father in the picture, the fact that joy was like such an integral part of it, I'm like, you can't have joy and laughter without life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like these names are just like so beyond appropriate.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at the end of the book, you have photos of them that are just absolutely precious. This is when the tears came and I'm like, I can't wait to talk to you today. It's just such a whirlwind of a story. And again, those things, I don't know if I've said this already. I know I said it before I hit record, that there are just experiences that are totally ineffable. And you were able to capture the meaning and the experience of it through the images. Mm-hmm. And I just, it's brilliant. So I really recommend folks pick it up. I got to see a PDF version. I am absolutely picking up the book version. I like to do giveaways a lot. So somebody in my crew is going to get that. I absolutely love it. So now you have 2 beauties.
I do.
In your life. And how old are they now?
They're 2.5.
They're 2.5. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Running around, like getting into mischief and.
Oh my God. So much mischief and so much, but they're like such beautiful humans.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, I feel so blessed. Like there's like all the difficulties of 2-year-olds and the tantrums and this and that, but like fundamentally they're just amazing kids.
Oh, there they are. Mama, where are you? We also didn't talk about another child that you had while you were going through all this, your little baby bunny that is throughout the book as well. What a story there. You have all these like, parallel stories, and it's just beautifully done. Nicely done, Myriam. I just love it. So good. Yeah. All right. So in the interest of time, I want to respect your mamahood. There were a few things I wanted to talk about, and maybe I can have you back. I would love to talk about the choice to single parent, and also the importance of having the support system that you have. Mm-hmm. So eventually I'd like to talk about that. But today I would love to just expand a little bit on the spirit baby stuff, because that's where my listeners really, they love hearing about that experience. And I love that you noted, I'm not a woo-woo person. I'm not a religious person. And yet I had these experiences. So what did you think? What did you think when you were having these? They feel quite real.
They're extraordinarily real. Yeah. So basically, I mean, it happened multiple times. So, and on different levels too. So like the first baby, the first pregnancy, her name didn't float past. I never found out her sex, but I could never find a boy's name. Mm-hmm. Like I was racking my brain, like nothing would come up, and only a girl's name would come up. Mm-hmm. And I named her after, so her name's Dahlia, and I named her after Dahlia because my grandparents loved dahlias. That was one of their favorite flowers. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to kind of honor them, and thus the name Dahlia.
Yeah.
And because my grandmother was still living at the time that I was pregnant with Dahlia, not my grandmother. I was not pregnant with my grandmother.
I love your grandmother, by the way. That was in my email this morning. I'm like, I love your grandmother. Just letting you know. Lovely person.
Yeah. Yeah, because, and in Judaism, you don't name a baby after a living person. Mm-hmm. So I didn't want to name her after my grandmother. And so that was kind of like the next best thing. And like, how do you honor her? And then I had other experiences, like there was one time kind of in between, then it was never a confirmed pregnancy, and I don't think it was even far enough to be a chemical miscarriage where the embryo tries to implant. But mm-hmm. I do think the spirit kind of got in there, because I was doing a meditation one day, and it was a guided meditation. And all of us, and I was feeling kind of nauseous. I'm like, oh, maybe I'm pregnant, maybe I'm not, I don't know. It was just like a few days after the IUI. And then during that meditation, I felt like this female spirit was just like going from my belly into my throat and trying to leave my mouth. And I was like, where are you going? She's like, oh, I just want to see out. I'm like, no, but you need to be inside. Like, yeah. You can't go out there. Like, if you go out there, I won't be pregnant with you. And then she just left.
Yeah.
And then when I went for my first beta, I wasn't pregnant.
Okay.
So there was that. And then I didn't put it in the book that I was mentioning the time that I saw the 3D ultrasound looking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, like I was kind of in a meditative space for that. And I think it was like different pregnancy, but I think it was the same person.
Aha.
Yeah. I actually think she came back like 2 or 3 times.
Entirely possible. Yes.
Yeah. I think it was actually Layla, who's like later on in the book.
Yep.
And
yep.
When I finally got pregnant with Layla, I think she was my third IVF baby. Mm-hmm. Her name floated past. Like, I didn't know what her sex was, and I was like, yay, I'm pregnant, woohoo. And then her name floated past as I was petting Sherbert on the floor, and I'm like, oh, what a pretty name. Oh, okay, I think I'm having a girl. And then I had a miscarriage, and then I told you about Abigail and Isaac's names coming. Azaria's name also floated past. I was talking with my grandmother, and like, I'd never heard this name before. And, you know, like my mom was going to name me Ezra had I been a boy. And I think my grandmother in that conversation maybe was talking about her father, whose name is Arya.
Yep.
But it was like
they melded
but
together.
She had actually used his English name, not his Hebrew name.
Oh.
So I didn't know that his name was Arya. It was when I asked my dad later on.
Yeah.
That I found out that his Hebrew name was Arya.
But interesting.
When she was talking about him, she was using his English name.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That just so, like, it further like solidifies. Yeah.
So Zarya's kind of like the conflation of Ezra and Arya.
Yeah.
You know, like, so like a lot of ancestry and a lot of present spirit. You know, like so much in that name.
And how, if you're not a religious person or, you know, woo-woo, as you know, people say, how did you reconcile that? How did you reconcile these knowings or these even visions? How did you reconcile that in your mind or spirit? Right?
I mean, I think it felt too real to deny. Yeah. I couldn't just pass it off as nothing. I couldn't just brush it off. It was just too real. Yeah. And it didn't necessarily feel like it belonged to a system that had a God, that had like all these other things attached to it, and all like a whole religion. It didn't need the prayers that are ascribed to
Right.
Judaism or to Christianity. Like it was something else. It was like this other dimension, and it kind of like made me feel like there are these spirits that are looking for homes, that don't live in a heaven or a purgatory or in a hell or just like floating around. Like it's not animism. It's just like, yeah. And then they come and they visit and they're like, yeah, no, it's a bit squishy in here. I'm not super comfortable. See you later. Sorry. Not sorry. Like,
yeah.
So I don't know. It was really odd. And so I just kind of lived it. And it helped me become close with the babies. It helped me create this intimacy that might otherwise have not been there.
Yeah.
And I had like, because I was going at it as a single mom by choice, I didn't have a partner with whom to share experiences. Like I was like chatting to my bunny, I guess. Like not quite the same thing. Like
not quite.
Yeah. So kind of like this other level of intimacy that I got to experience.
Yes.
And it was really comforting, and it was really like,
yeah,
I think intuition is so important and so undervalued, and so
much so. Yes.
Just brushed off as like, oh yeah, that's just weird. And I'm like,
it's coincidence.
Exactly. Or oh, it's just in your head. It's just
right.
It's just you're creating the story because you really want to believe this, or whatever,
yes.
like you really want to have this relationship, and so you're just making it up subconsciously.
Right.
No, this is not made up. This is like for real.
This is truth. Yeah.
And then like I talk about it later on in the book, but like the whole carving the name initials.
Oh my gosh, that made my heart skip a beat. Yeah, say what you're talking about. Yeah, go ahead.
So the whole like losing the babies was really hard, and I didn't have a way of processing that. And I was talking to a friend of mine who had lost a baby late term, and she was telling me about a ceremony that she did every year for this baby, and then she had since had a baby, and she brings now her son into that ceremony, and she honors the baby that she lost. And it's a very like every year it's the same ritual, and it was really beautiful. And so I created my own ritual where every year I chose the due date of Azaria, that was the baby with Down syndrome, as kind of my ritual day, my recognition of the babies that I lost. And so every 5th of January, I write them a letter. I'm always super tempted to photograph the letter to keep it as a keepsake for myself, but I'm like, no, it's not for me. It's for my babies. It's not. It's not for anybody else. And then there's a lake, a little park, kind of close to my house that has a beautiful lake. And I go to that lake and I read the letter out loud. I burn the letter, and then I spend a moment remembering and being grateful for them in my life. And
just love it.
Yeah. And so the first year that happened, there was a snowstorm that hadn't happened in like over 20 years, where the lake froze over. And I went there with my friend Lani. It was the first time that I was doing this ceremony, and I'd written this letter, and I brought a candle on later. We get to the lake, and there's like hockey games all over the place. There's dogs, there's kids, it's nighttime, there's stars, it's gorgeous, it's beautiful, there's laughter everywhere. And it's just like so beautiful and so just magical. And we start walking onto the lake because it just felt right to do the ceremony in the middle of the lake. We're like, okay, where can we go that's not in the middle of a hockey game and that we have a little bit of space still? And we get to the middle, and somebody had stamped out a labyrinth. And I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly where we need to be.
Yep.
So we walked the labyrinth, and we went to the middle, and we did the ceremony, and it was just, oh my God. I could not have thought of there's no way I could have imagined a better context in which to grieve and to remember and to think on the babies. So I kept doing that. And then one year it was pouring rain and I almost didn't go, and I was on my own. My friend Lani wasn't available that night. And I was like, do I go? Do I not go? Oh, it's so gross out. And so I wrote the letter and I ended up going. And there's nobody in the park because it's like grim. It's monsooning. And I go under a willow tree and I read the letter, I burn the letter, and then I walk to the lake and I'm like all huddled in my raincoat and I'm watching the one lone duck, thinking about everything, and I'm getting a bit chilly. And then as I'm walking back towards the car, I'm like, I had this really huge compulsion to carve the initials of the babies that I had lost in a tree. And all I had was my keys. So I went back to the willow tree and I started trying to carve, but the keys weren't sharp enough. But I started trying just like kind of like just scraping it on the bark. And I was like, okay, Dahlia, D, Azaria, A, Layla, L. I'm like, oh my God, this is spelling Dahlia. And then, I mean, it's interesting because with the book, in real life, Isaac and Abigail were not a thing yet when this happened. But when I thought about it 2 years later, and I was like, holy crap, I actually finished spelling Dahlia. And in the book, I kind of conflate those two like the timelines just because it just made more sense to do that. The result is the same, but it spells out Dahlia, which means fate.
Oh my God.
And
unbelievable.
And the like unbelievable that it's Isaac and Abigail who closed the fate. Like there's the DAL that happened kind of halfway through the journey, and then Isaac and Abigail happened, and then that was like closure to the story, closure to like I'm fated to actually have these kids.
Yes. And that's what I mean by the beauty of your story and how you wrote it and illustrated it. Well, you had an illustrator, but that's one of the last things that I wanted to ask you too, is how you create meaning from all this difficulty. And there's one piece right there, right? Oh, here they are. They close this whole scenario, this whole story, and create a new beginning, right?
Absolutely.
Just gorgeous. Well, my goodness, I really appreciate you taking the time from busyness to be with me today and the rest of the listeners and watchers, viewers, and telling your story. Do you have any final words of wisdom or support or love or compassion for listeners and viewers today?
I mean, there's so much, right? It's I think that one of the big things for me, I mean, one of the hugest things for my survival was community, and sharing my story, and not like, even if there were moments where I felt shame or insecurity or self-hatred or whatever, that I didn't keep it to myself, that I shared it with friends. And the other really important ingredient that I found for myself was there is such a thing as compassion fatigue.
Yeah.
And so I was really careful to kind of like spread out my, like, where, to whom I asked support. Like I wouldn't rely on one person to give me all the support, because it's exhausting.
Yeah.
You know? And so if you are able to build community around yourself, share your story, you'll find like so many people will be like, oh my God, I also blah, blah, blah. And like, it's not a matter of comparing, because if you compare stories and you're like, everybody's story is so different.
Yeah.
And it's really important to acknowledge that if somebody's like, oh, I had a miscarriage, or I had 2 miscarriages, not be like, oh yeah, me too, I had like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, whatever, blah, blah, blah. It's not a competition. It's not like a comparison story. But what is important, the important ingredient is in it, is that the pain is real. The pain is deep. It's visceral. And that's the important thing, is the empathy and the compassion that you can give to somebody, or that you can accept to receive, because it's not easy to accept to receive.
True.
The compassion. Very true. Right?
Very true.
Yeah.
Beautifully said. Thank you. So, anything else? Sorry, were you going to say anything else?
Yeah, that just create a protective space around yourself. It's okay to unfollow people that are really triggering to you, not because they're a nasty human being, but because their journey is simpler than yours, or all of that. It's not that you are not friends with them still. It's that you're trying to protect your heart, right? And like, if you're invited to a baby shower, be honest, be like, I'm really sorry, it's too painful for me because I'm going through this, and I love you, and maybe I will send you a gift. And if it's a true friend or a true like a loving family member, they'll be like, I get it, I totally understand, and I'm giving you my heart.
Good. I love that. Thank you very much. Yeah. So clear and loving boundaries. And I love that. So, I'm sorry. One more question. Yeah. What does Catalogue Baby mean? What does that mean?
Well, depending on my choice, there ain't no sperm entering my body. So, put it as crassly as possible.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. I have no filters, apparently.
I love that. No filters. Be you.
So yeah, I like sperm donors. I mean, I had the IVF I tried with a known donor, but generally, and all the pregnancies that I had, oh no, wait, I did have an IVF pregnancy with my known donor, but in any case, there were a lot of catalogs I went through to find donors, first for sperm and then for eggs.
Yep. There you go.
Yeah. It's all about the catalogs. Thank you, catalogs.
You are amazing catalogs. So you all will remember that now. Catalogue Baby is Myriam's book, and it's right behind you. I can see an image of it right behind you on the shelf. Yep, that's it.
Yeah. There you go. You're watching.
There it is. Oh, can you flip through it really quick to show the images? They're so cool.
I can also do a screen share if you want.
Oh, that's so cool.
I'm going to do
love. Yeah. Oh, there's one of the, yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that one. Oh, yeah. I will link to, there she is. Oh,
Herbert. Yeah. This was her mode of locomotion. She had a lot going on with her. She had an abscess and she had glaucoma, and at exactly the same time I was going through the stuff with Azaria, she went through surgery, and it was
amazing,
mega botched surgery, and she ended up very disabled.
Poor thing.
And I had to reteach her how to walk, how to groom, how to do all the things.
Yeah. You were like her physical therapist.
Yeah.
It's such a great story too, in parallel to yours, or in tandem with. So I will link to the book in the show notes. Y'all, please go pick it up. It is so good. And thank you, Myriam. I really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you very much.